The number one book of 2022 is Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. The Way of Poetry. Orthodoxy is one of my favorite books. I read it 12 years ago, and this past year I re-listened to it, and it still stands up as a great book. It still remains one of my favorite reads. Sometimes you revisit things that you liked several years ago and you have a different opinion on it. You don't like it as much, or sometimes it's even better. This, I think, is about the same, maybe a little bit better. I definitely really love this book. In 2011, I was diving deeper into philosophy and apologetics and things like this. I was in the Marines, but I spent much of my free time reading philosophy and theology. While I was in Afghanistan, another Marine had sent me Orthodoxy by Chesterton, and it was such a relief. I had gotten so entrenched in trying to figure everything out that I didn't realize it was as if my intellect was suffocating. And reading Orthodoxy was a breath of fresh air. It was like Chesterton coming up to me and saying, "Hey man, mystery is okay." Like he placed his hand on my shoulder and he's like, "Hey, you need to relax. Mystery is okay. Not only is it okay, it's glorious. Here, let me show you." So this certainly came as quite a bit of a relief that I didn't even know I needed. Chesterton won me over with Orthodoxy. He won me over to the way of poetry, we might say. I've held to this way ever since. Chesterton says, "Poetry is sane because it floats easily in an infinite sea. Reason seeks to cross the infinite sea and to make it finite. The result is mental exhaustion. To accept everything is an exercise, to understand everything a strain. The poet only desires exaltation and expansion, a world to stretch himself in. The poet only asks to get his head into the heavens. It is the logician who seeks to get the heavens into his head, and it is his head that splits." The Maniac and the Mystic. The entire book is phenomenal, but his chapter on the maniac remains salient in my mind. In it, he launches this devastating salvo against what I would call improperly formed reason or maybe hyper-rationality, and instead he extols the virtues of mystery, of the poetic, not as an alternative to reason. He's not against reason. He wrote Aquinas's biography, or a biography of Aquinas. He loves reason, but he wants reason in its proper place. Mysticism keeps men sane. As long as you have mystery, you have health. When you destroy mystery, you create morbidity. The ordinary man has always been sane because the ordinary man has always been a mystic. He has permitted the twilight. He has always had one foot in earth and the other in fairyland. He has always left himself free to doubt his gods, but, unlike the agnostic of today, free also to believe in them. He has always cared more for truth than consistency. If he saw two truths that seemed to contradict each other, he would take the two truths and the contradiction along with them. His spiritual sight is stereoscopic. Like his physical sight, he sees two different pictures at once and yet sees all the better for that. Thus, he has always believed that there was such a thing as fate, but such a thing as free will also. Thus, he believed that children were indeed the kingdom of heaven, but nevertheless ought to be obedient to the kingdom of earth. He admired youth because it was young and age because it was not. It is exactly this balance of apparent contradictions that has been the whole buoyancy and the health of man. The whole secret of mysticism is this, that man can understand everything by the help of what he does not understand. This is just fantastic beyond words. It's so relevant to so many different things in our world today, and particularly men who are drawn to an intellectual life. I think that the rational maniac is a victim of his own arrogance and pride. It takes humility to say, "I don't know." And it takes going low to be able to comprehend and rest in what is high. Aliens in the Heart. In a later chapter, exploring the paradoxes of Christianity, Chesterton gives a very helpful illustration highlighting the flaw in hyper-rational maniacs. He says, "The real trouble with this world of ours is not that it is an unreasonable world, nor even that it is a reasonable one. The commonest kind of trouble is that it is nearly reasonable, but not quite. Life is not an illogicality, yet it is a trap for logicians. It looks just a little more mathematical and regular than it is. Its exactitude is obvious, but its inexactitude is hidden. Its wildness lies in wait. I give one coarse instance of what I mean. Suppose some mathematical creature from the moon were to reckon upon the human body. He would at once see that the essential thing about it was that it was duplicate. A man is two men, he on the right exactly resembling him on the left. Having noted that there was an arm on the right and one on the left, a leg on the right and one on the left, he might go further and still find on each side the same number of fingers, and the same number of toes, twin eyes, twin ears, twin nostrils, and even twin lobes of the brain. At last he would take it as a law, and then, where he found a heart on one side, would deduce that there was another heart on the other, and just then, where he most felt he was right, he would be wrong. The paradoxes of Christianity. Orthodoxy is an apologetic for Christianity, and Chesterton walks us through his own journey of thinking about Christianity and its apparent contradictions and paradoxes. He says this is one among many things that are great, but he says this: the more I had considered Christianity, the more I found that while it had established a rule and order, the chief aim of that order was to give room for good things to run wild. Excellent. Ungracious Grace. He ends the book with this fantastic passage about divine grace. It has stayed with me all of these years, and it is immensely relevant to the lawless and soft culture and church that we find ourselves in. The strongest argument for the divine grace is simply its ungraciousness. The unpopular parts of Christianity turn out, when examined, to be the very props of the people. The outer ring of Christianity is a rigid guard of ethical abnegations and professional priests, but inside that inhuman guard, you will find the old human life dancing like children and drinking wine like men, for Christianity is the only frame for pagan freedom. But in the modern philosophy, the case is opposite. It is its outer ring that is obviously artistic and emancipated. Its despair is within. Great book, fantastic book, highly recommend.